Okay, so today we're going to do a test of how a Tesla or an EV does in cold weather. Now, I'm in Utah. There is snow on the ground. It is cold. It's not sub-zero cold, but it's cold. And we're gonna drive. I have charged the car all the way up to 97% or 332 miles. Now, I did precondition the car, that's why it's at 97 and not 100, but in any case, this is a Model 3 long range from 2022, so let's see how it does. Alright, so I'm using autopilot right now, but we're driving uphill on a highway going up to Park City, and so we're definitely using a lot more energy going uphill, but when we come back down, we're going to put a lot more back into the battery. Now, the temperature is 46, so it's not super cold, but we will be leaving the car outside unplugged for pretty much all day, and so we'll get to see how the car loses battery when sitting out in the cold. And so the battery will be soaked in cold pretty much, and then we're going to drive home and see how it does and see how much range we lose. And I've also started a trip on the computer here of the car to see how much energy we're using just by driving right now. Right now, we're using about 478 watt hours per mile, which is pretty high. That's quite a bit, and at that rate, you would expect to lose half of your range. And so we're at 309 miles of range on 91%. So we've lost already quite a bit. We haven't gone too far. We've only gone 8 miles, and we've lost 6-7%, and that's pretty significant. So we'll see how it goes. Keeping in mind that generally electric cars do lose range in the cold, and the car is actively warming the battery, using energy to keep it warm in these kinds of conditions. Now, after prolonged use, as with anything, you're not using as much energy to warm it up, so that kind of helps. But we're gonna again soak it in the cold, get back in and see how the range goes. All right, so we have driven 26 miles. However, the range now says 283 miles. So we went from about 313 down to 283. So as you can see already, there is a little bit of range loss. Now, a lot of that can be attributed to going uphill, and I would say not because of the snow or the cold. So it's about 39 degrees right now. And let's see, we're gonna park the car here for maybe 8-9 hours and just let it be in the cold. It looks like it's starting to snow, and so I'm gonna also precondition it. I'm gonna defrost it, so we're gonna use some battery doing that. That's something you normally wouldn't do in the summer unless you wanted to turn on the air conditioning. All right, so it's the next day. I didn't get footage from the time when we got into the car because it was really dark and the footage was just not very good, but I do have the numbers. So we got back in the car around like 9 hours later, and it had snowed. The temperature had dropped. There was snow on the car. So what I did is I checked on the app. On Sentry mode, I can see the cameras and I can see that there was some snow on the car. So what I did is I turned on the defrost mode, so that will turn up all the heat inside the car. It'll heat up the battery as well, and it'll melt the snow off the outside of the car. Now, there's two things to note here. One, using defrost or precondition definitely does use some battery before getting into the car. And Sentry mode also uses a lot of battery because the computers are running, grabbing video if anyone gets close to the car, things like that. So that is typical use. I'm not going to say that I did anything different on this test to try to get more miles out of it. I really just wanted to show what a typical day using an EV in a winter climate is like, really trying to keep it very, very much like it was done in a lab or anything. It was just real life. So I always keep Sentry mode on. There is a setting to have it turn off when you're home. So when I'm at home, it turns off and saves some battery because I don't need it on. What happened to the battery? Well, when we got back into the car, it was at 80%. When I started the preconditioning, it was at 81. So I did use 1% battery to precondition the car. When we got in, 70 degrees, heated seats and steering wheel on, no more snow on the car, so we were ready to go. And since the battery was already warmed up, I had full capacity to use all of the power of the car right from the get-go. And that also means that the car is using less energy while driving. Otherwise, it would have to use energy to warm up the battery, heat up the cabin, and drive. Whereas now, it's only maintaining the temperature inside the cabin, and driving is normal because the battery is already heated to an optimal temperature. So, as we went home, it was all downhill. So going up, it was all uphill, and going down, it was all downhill. So I actually gained 1% or 2 going home. Now, by the time I got home, it was a little bit flat, so it all evened out. But I want to mention that on a normal day, this car will typically put back into the battery maybe 3% on that drive back down. So that's pretty good. You kind of offset a bit of the loss in that way. Now let's talk about the actual efficiency of the vehicle. Now, Tesla vehicles, as opposed to other EVs, typically have a bit better efficiency, as in they use less kilowatts per mile driven. So that being said, we did see pretty bad efficiency on the way up. It was around 478, 73. It was pretty high. And that could be attributed to the steep incline of the drive as well as the colder temperatures. Now, across the entire trip, the average definitely went down because as we were going downhill, although it was still cold and then we were using the heater and such, the average across the entire trip that day was around 350 kilowatts per hour or kilowatts per mile. And so that's still typically higher than you would see normally in a very average climate, like let's say Southern California, where you're probably not using too much of the climate control. It's a lot of flat roads. So that is probably a better test of using it in more rigorous conditions. It's not rigorous as in the sense of going off-road or anything, but rigorous as in it's taxing the battery a little bit more than optimal conditions. So these were suboptimal conditions for sure. It was cold and there was inclines and it was a bit windy as well. That does affect it a little bit just because of drag. It will cause more drag on the car, meaning less efficiency. So all that being said, now this was a good test of what living with an EV is like, because it was parked at home overnight, so I had a full battery when I wanted to leave, which I can't say about the numerous gas cars we have. If I forgot to put gas, I definitely have to go put gas before driving up there because it's a journey for sure. It's a half an hour drive and it's all uphill, so like the EV, I will use more gas to go up. I'll lose efficiency in that sense. And so it's just having that peace of mind that I have a full tank, and so I don't have to worry too much about that. Now, a lot of places also do have free EV charging if you park there. I know Deer Valley Resort has free EV charging. The city of Park City has numerous free EV charging spots around Main Street and such. So if it wasn't Sundance Film Festival week, there would probably be a lot of spots open, which I'll park there because it's like getting free gas. Now, I don't want to say like I'm an EV fanatic or anything, but I think I've driven a lot of SUVs, and that's my favorite type of car. Big V8s, big V6s, big as in higher displacement, but in any case, very inefficient vehicles, and I love them. But I think, whenever I want to go for the most comfortable and most convenient vehicle, I always choose the Tesla just because you can precondition it. It'll be warm when you get back in. You don't have to wait for the car to warm up. I always typically in the winter let my cars warm up for a minute or two at least, just to make sure that we're not causing any damage to the engine in the cold. Now I know that a lot of modern cars, you typically don't even need to do this, but I just like to be more cautious, and some of our vehicles are older. So I just want to point that out. I'm not living the high life in a 2024 brand new vehicle or anything, so there's that as well. But as far as just the convenience factor, it's the best. Now, how does it do when you're trying to charge an EV in the cold? Now, you've probably seen a lot of reports about what's happened in Chicago and other cold climates where EVs are unable to charge in the cold. Now, we have driven this car in some very, very extreme environments. We've driven it through blizzards where you're driving on the highway and there's a foot of snow that's already fallen, so you're plowing through the snow, and we're in the middle of Wyoming. There's nothing around, but still able to charge, no problem. Even through that, even when it's sub-zero temperatures. So sub-zero temperatures, lots of drag, obviously, with the snow, and low efficiency. So definitely you're not getting the full 330 miles of range, no doubt. It's probably half or even less in some cases, but it's still able to take a charge. And here's what I want to say about taking a charge in the cold. Now, of course, gas car, you can fill it up if it's cold, if it's hot, it doesn't matter. And that's wonderful. And that's saved me a lot of times, right? If it was too cold to be able to put gas in my car, I would be screwed if I was in the middle of Moab or something, which has happened. When it's sub-zero temperatures, I need gas. I will say a lot of times when these vehicles were not taking a charge is because a lot of folks did not precondition their battery before going to a charger. So typically, if you're driving a Tesla vehicle and some other EVs, if you use the navigation within the vehicle and you put in a destination, and let's say you need to have a charge to get there, what it will do is as you approach that charging destination, it will precondition the battery, as in warming it up or keeping it at an optimal temperature to take as fast a charge as possible. If you don't do this, let's say you just show up at a supercharger or another charger like EVgo, ChargePoint, Flow, etc. What the battery will have to do first is get it to that optimal temperature and condition, and then it can take the maximum amount of charge. This goes for most batteries, lithium-ion batteries, and what it does is it just takes the excess heat from the motors to be able to heat up that battery in a quicker fashion than normal. So what happens if you're in a very cold climate and you don't precondition that battery? Well, it can't take that charge at the 250 kilowatts that they advertise. And so what you might see is you might think, oh, it's not charging, but it actually is. It's just charging at a very, very low rate to just give it some juice to heat up that battery. Once that battery gets heated up to an optimal temperature, it will start ramming in those electrons. It'll go at a higher rate. And probably what was happening is people were getting impatient and saying, oh, it's not charging, because they're sitting there for 5-10 minutes and it's not really moving the needle. But really what's happening is first it's heating up the battery and then it's gonna start charging. And so there are probably situations where maybe some superchargers were not working because of the cold, and that might be the case, but I suspect a lot of the cases were exactly that. And of course, if you had a very low state of charge, having things like Sentry mode on and some other features will drain the battery even when you're not driving, and then it is out of battery and you got to tow it. And so I don't know all the details of each person's individual situation, but that typically is what will happen in a case like that in the cold. And so I say definitely you have to precondition your battery before charging it, because then you don't have to deal with waiting for it to warm up before charging, and you can just plug in like it was a normal spring summer's day and you can charge at a fast rate. Now, I have done preconditioning and still seeing that it doesn't charge at its full rate. It'll say due to temperature, it's not charging at its fastest 250 kilowatts, and so maybe it might charge at 150 kilowatts an hour, but that is still fast charging and still working. Now, some other vehicles like Ford or Chevy, you put the navigation to a destination, it says you have to charge, you go to the charger. It doesn't actually possibly say that it is preconditioning the battery, but it actually is on the back side of things. So it is doing it behind the scenes, but you just don't know it. Whereas on Tesla, it gives you a notification that the battery is now preconditioning for the supercharger. So possibly that's why people might think, oh, why would I do that? Why would I need to do that on my car? I just go fill up gas. But actually, you do need to do that. So yes, it's not as convenient as a gas car where you just show up, put some gas, and that's it. It's an extra step, but I think the overall convenience of having an EV, especially in today's day and age of Tesla, just because of the charging network, the convenience, the features that they have, is still superior to most gas cars. I mean, I love gas cars. I still want to own them. I want to get as many as I can before EVs take over. But I think just as a day-to-day vehicle, and if you're driving less than 300 miles in a day, they're really great just for getting from point A to point B. Really convenient in a lot of senses. A lot of people might rent these cars for short periods of time, but I think after living with it for almost 3 years, it's a different experience. I've rented Teslas before, and before even owning it, and you get a very different experience as an owner because you set everything the way you have it. It connects to your calendar. If you need to get to work at a certain time, the car will already be preconditioned, already be cooled down or heated up for you to get when you get there. So it's ready to go. It will be charged at your home, usually ready to go. We don't have any fancy outlets in our garage. It's just a regular 110 standard outlet, and that's enough to just keep the car maintained every day and ready for us to use it for the day. And so I think just all of those things accumulated together make it a much more convenient vehicle. Now, a lot of newer cars, you can start the car from a key fob or from an app on your phone, and that's really good, and I'm happy to see that because I use those features, especially living somewhere cold or hot. In Florida, I will use that remote start feature to actually turn on the AC in the car because they just get so hot. But even here, I can vent the windows and turn on the AC on the Tesla before getting in. So I think overall, the convenience factor is great. Now in the cold, they do suffer for sure. That is a fact. They do suffer in terms of range, but I think overall your experience will still be really great in a cold environment, although you will have to charge it more. I will also mention we have driven it in lots of snow, in very precarious situations. We live on a mountain on a very steep hill, and it makes it up no problem on the regular tires that it comes with, just all-season Michelin tires. Now, I've seen some people put winter tires on it, and if you put winter tires on it, it's pretty much unstoppable. It's really great. The only thing I'll mention is if you're going downhill and it's a bit slippery, it is a lot of weight. Even though it's a smaller car, the size of a 3 Series BMW, C-Class, Mercedes, Civic, Corolla kind of size car, it does weigh a lot more because of those batteries. So when you're coming to a stop or using regenerative braking, you do need to be a bit more careful, just keeping that in mind. Now, if you've driven bigger, heavier cars, you understand what I mean. You typically want to slow down a little bit earlier. You don't want to make any sudden stops of hitting the brakes because then you'll slide. You want it to be smooth and gradual. Overall experience, really fantastic in the snow, really fantastic in the cold weather, although the range does suffer. But convenience-wise, it's quite good. One other thing, it did freeze over the door handle a little bit, but you can open the doors via the app on your phone because they are electrically latching, so you can just pop the door open and open it through the app if that ever happens to you. But I just pushed it a little bit and it got through the ice and opened up, so it was quite cold, just to prove my point. Thank you for watching this video. Please subscribe. I'm trying to put out any of the relevant content to really help people understand whatever it might be it about EVs, be it about tech, finance, or even just some travel videos. And I have some good travel videos coming up and a business class review of Swiss Airlines. Anyway, thanks for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.